Hey everybody, thanks for being here. Today's episode is a little different. Today we're talking with a listener who needs some support around intimacy and sex in her relationship. And we're sharing this here so that you can see yourself reflected. These are the kinds of challenges that we all share. The prompts that we're going to be using with her are prompts you can use in your own life, even if these are not the challenges that you're facing. And we're working with her the same as we would in our private coaching and groups. So there are some lengthy pauses as we deliver prompts and she feels her way through what she wants to say. We specifically left these in because these are great opportunities for you to feel your emotions as they come up and to reflect on these challenges for yourself and how you might answer these questions. So take your time, and if it's helpful, you can watch along with us on Spotify or YouTube. It can be a good thing to see what's coming up for people on their faces and in their bodies while you're practicing this kind of work for yourself. Also of note, this is an episode in 2 parts. In today's episode, we explore and reframe relationship challenges, and next week we talk about some solutions and healthy connected ways to explore these challenges for ourselves. Let's get into it. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Wholehearted Loving. I'm Stephanie.
Hi, I'm Georgiana.
And today we have a guest. It is our first call-in show, and we're going to be answering her questions. But before we get to it, as always, we are going to start with a body-based self-connection practice to take some time to connect with ourselves before we connect with each other and with the podcast. Gee, I see you already moving. Have you got something in mind?
Yeah, I have something in mind. Let's feel our butts on the chair. And let yourself notice your breath. And we'll pair some intentional breath with a little bit of gentle movement. So on the inhale through the nose, let's lift our shoulders up to our ears. And on the exhale through the mouth, roll your shoulders back and then down. And we'll do 2 more of those at your own pace. So inhale, shoulders come up. Exhale, roll your shoulders back and down. Have a little check-in. Follow your body's impulse for any extra movement or stillness. And then I'm going to add one more practice, which is bringing hands together. So whatever that means for you, I just want your hands to get to touch. And then we're going to inhale and open up the arms. So outstretch the arms to the side. It might be up and down. It might be just to left and right. And exhale. Bring the hands back together to touch. And again, at your own body's pace, inhale to open up the arms. Exhale to bring the hands back together. And if it feels good for you, you can let your hands land on heart center just to come back to a body connection.
Thank you.
Yeah. And have a little notice of what that felt like. How's your body doing now? What do you notice in your bodies, ladies?
I feel still. And I just did a bunch of body connection before I arrived, so I feel very similar to how I did 5 minutes ago.
Nice.
My breath felt a little more easeful when I was intentional about it. I'm a little congested right now. My breath felt more easeful and feeling more centered.
Beautiful. I chose this practice first with the shoulder rolls just because it sort of gets us in touch with our body. And then an opening, right? JC, you're coming on and you're going to be opening yourself, your heart, to not just Stephanie and I, but to the people who are listening. And so I wanted to let your body have the opportunity to just feel how it feels to open up, and then get to come and reset and check in again and open up and reset to check in. What did you notice about that opening up element of the practice?
Yeah, I felt very connected to my heart space, and I felt a sense of expansion, like physically and emotionally.
Beautiful.
It's a perfect combination. Sense of self plus expansion. That's great. Okay. So we were just talking before we signed on about how to approach this, because we are going to be talking to you, JC, whose name we may or may not be bleeping out, and we may or may not make you anonymous, because you're going to be talking about your relationship. Do you want to say a little bit about, maybe we'll start with the privacy stuff, how to honor ourselves and our partners or loved ones, and what's come up for you around that?
Yeah, so I'll be talking about my relationship, but focused mostly on sex and intimacy, which goes, beyond my current relationship as well, into the past. And so I kind of checked in with my partner before hopping on with you all to see where he was at, how comfortable he felt about, does he want his name shared? What type of details is he okay with and not okay with? And he came to me saying he'd rather me talk about me, and he would rather me not share personal details about him and his experience, which I want to honor. And it's a relationship. So, there's parts of both of us that come together in this topic. And so I was kind of struggling with, I was kind of feeling like I might have to filter or censor myself. And that didn't really feel good either. Yeah.
What is your desire when it comes to expression, like your own self-expression?
My desire is just to fully share me and my experience without filtering and censoring. And at the same time to not be misunderstood. Well, these are some of my stories, right? Like not be misunderstood and not hurt people's feelings. Those two things are hard to go hand in hand. Yeah. Fully expressed and protecting other people's feelings.
Protecting other people's feelings. Yeah. So this is reminding me, Georgiana, there was a time where you had a big challenge in a relationship. And you, as far as I'm concerned, are expert level ownership of self and expression of feelings and care for other people's feelings. So G was able to explain to me everything that was going on for her without telling me anything that was going on for him. And it was a masterful conversation. I've never had that experience other than Georgiana specifically. So I want to say that it is possible to do that, and it's hard to do. And you're here to specifically talk about this for yourself and to work through some stuff. So my inclination is for you to focus more on not censoring anything you say than on trying to worry about privacy on his behalf, and that we would censor out whatever needs to be. Georgiana, what do you have to say about this?
I just love, JC, that you're wanting to honor various needs of yours. Your need for care and respect for your partner and his wishes, and also your need for freedom of expression, and to not even to freely express outwardly to other people, but to own what your truth is. Right. And those are really important things to do. So thank you for just letting us witness what that looks like when we're practicing and we don't really know exactly how to do that. And I want to remind you that this is just practice, just like life is just practice. And like Steph says, I think when we have been conditioned to keep our truth to ourselves, then a nice muscle to practice is like, let's just let loose and like try the other end of the spectrum. No filter at all. Right? So if you feel comfortable with that, we invite you to do that today. And like Steph says, we'll take care of things on the back end afterwards.
Sounds good to me.
For other things to consider, what Steph was just talking about, because not everyone is sharing their life details on a podcast. Some people are just out there living their life and wanting to honor a partner's privacy while also either seeking support for themselves or just sharing what's going on for them. And one thing I've found, there's probably two things that I find really helpful in that. One is to grow the pause, because it gives us time, right? If we just all three of us practice, and those of you listening, to feel your feet on whatever they're touching, and to look at something and to notice your breath. Right there, we've grown a pause. When we can grow that pause, we can make that next choice of what's the next thing I want to say? What's the next thing I want to share? Does that involve sharing something about my partner, or would I like to hold that part back and share the piece about me? But when we haven't practiced growing that pause, it just all flies out of our mouth, right? So that's something to practice if that's important to us, to be able to choose intentionally how and what we share with people. The other piece to practice is how to speak about an experience without going into the details of the story. He did this, and then I did this, and then this happened, which is typically how we share, to I felt this way, right? It brought up my old stories of this or that. It reminded me of when, and that stirs up my fears of. Right? So I think what Stephanie's referring to, this thing that happened in my relationship, I think I just told her something hard, really hard happened today between us, between my partner and I. And like, I need to find a way to talk about it. And I want to honor his privacy. That was like all I told her about what happened. And typically we spend the majority of time telling people the what happened part. Yeah. Right. So I really practice flipping it. And the whole conversation essentially revolved around what it was stirring up for me, what my fears were, what my wishes were, what I felt or imagined I needed support with. Right. So what comes up for you, JC, hearing me share that piece?
Yeah, that I do that. Like I sometimes, when hard things happen in my relationship, I go and I vent to a friend or whatever and just go over the details. Yeah, he said, I said, and it doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't feel very good. Like it's just like reliving. That's what I've noticed, especially in the past year, is it's like this reliving it, which doesn't feel great because it didn't feel great in the moment. And so this is new. This feels huge to when something hard happens, to just use kind of those prompts that you just shared. That feels like more spacious and yeah. But it's not something I do very often.
A bit truer too.
Yeah.
I think we fluctuate between these two, right? Venting, telling all the stories and just retreading those memories and neural pathways. Then I think the other area of that we're falling into socially, and I'd love everyone to bring some consciousness to, is the notion of confidentiality. and how that relates to privacy. So somebody wanting their privacy is a very reasonable thing. And I think there are applications of that just end up being unconsciously evasive and hidey. So especially when we're in groups together and people are talking about each other and they're referring to somebody but won't use their name. And meanwhile, we're in a group where the work is specifically to confront each other about these kinds of things. That's an unconscious application of this Western confidentiality principle that we take to extremes outside of a reasonable context. So things to think about there too. JC, do you want to tell us a little bit about the problem you've come here to talk about today?
Yeah, I've come here seeking support and to be seen in my process of becoming more tapped in to my sensuality and my sexuality. That has been mostly a personal journey for me over the last 3-4 years. And I've come to a point now where I want it to be like a shared experience and bring this into my partnership. And that has been the big barrier for me. I, on my own, feel very tuned in to what feels good and expanding my ability to feel pleasure and to be open and soft, like physically and emotionally, and have done, just like a lot of exploration on my own with my own body, but not so much with my partner. And this has been, I'd say it's like a pattern in my relationships. I've had 3 longer term relationships. I never spent too much time single. So I never explored like casual intimacy very much. It was always like partnered. And my first relationship was 6 years long. And that was my first time experiencing sex with another person. And, I just remember thinking like, what's wrong with me in that first relationship? Because I didn't even have the language for like orgasm and pleasure. Like I had been doing that with myself since I was like 6 years old. Like I have so many memories of being, of exploring my body as a kid and feeling pleasure and feeling good and having no words, no social, things in the beginning. And then I was in this relationship where I wasn't feeling that, but I was supposed to feel that. So what's wrong with me? And I didn't even know that like what I was experiencing on my own was orgasm. So though the partnered sex and the sex alone and pleasure alone were very separate for me until, after that 6-year relationship, like 6 years ago, 7, 8 years ago.
Okay. Yeah. What is the pattern that you mentioned? This is a pattern in your relationships. Can you just identify what you think that pattern is?
Yeah. So, going long periods of time without sex, not wanting to have sex with my partner, that sort of thing. Like it becoming a barrier and like not having a lot of sex after the initial new relationship.
A honeymoon?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're describing then having a pretty fulsome sexual relationship with yourself, and then a spicy honeymoon period, and then a deadening of the sexual relationship with your partner. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
What would be the pattern, JC, once the deadening of the sexual pattern was apparent, either to you or to your partner? What was the pattern then?
Yeah. So I'll just focus on my current relationship, which now we're 6 years. So it's interesting to kind of like be surpassing that point because that was my longest relationship previously. So in my current relationship, I had a couple years where I was really struggling with my mental health, depression, anxiety. And I mean, that I put together. Like, my sex drive and depression and anxiety don't go together. So that was the first big change in our sex life. Was I was struggling with my mental health. And so I stopped initiating. And then when he would initiate, I would say no. And that went on for like a couple years.
Okay.
And then there was a switch because my mental health's been great, much better. Haven't experienced depression like I used to in a few years. So, and I started exploring my sexuality and my pleasure again. And so I was feeling ready for sex, and then I was trying to initiate, and now all of a sudden he was saying no. I was gonna pause to decide if I want to share that detail about him. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it's necessary, so I'll leave it out. But he stopped. He started saying no. So now we've had this long period where I was saying no and he was being turned down, and then it flipped. So now I feel we've both lost a lot of confidence in initiating because we've been rejected so many times. So that's one big challenge. Is fear of rejection.
Okay. I have a question for you. Mm-hmm. When your partner rejects you and your sexual advances, what do you make that mean?
That, okay, I don't need you. I can find pleasure on my own.
Oh, that you think that for yourself, or that he's thinking that?
No, like that's what I think. When he rejects me, yeah, it reinforces that maybe I don't need him because I can find pleasure on my own.
Okay. Yeah. And then what do you make it mean about yourself?
That I'm not desirable. Mm-hmm. That he doesn't find me attractive.
JC, I'm going to pause you. I'm going to have you add something to this, okay? I want you to practice using the prompt, I made it mean. I made it mean, and then finish with exactly the things that you just shared. And after each sentence, take a moment to feel your body connection, whether that's your feet on the floor or your butt on the chair or a hand on your body, and notice your breath. See what you notice.
I made it mean I'm not desirable. I made it mean that he's no longer attracted to me. I made it mean I'm doing it wrong.
That's good. Okay, just feel that for a moment.
Yeah, I feel like tears.
Yeah, that's okay. That's good. Okay. Now I'm going to ask you to again follow that prompt. What did you make it mean about him?
I made it mean that he doesn't want me. Wow, I'm feeling blocked on that one.
Okay. That's good data to know that you're blocked there. I'm going to ask you just to repeat that prompt a few times, even if you can't fill in the blank, and see if something comes up. Okay?
Okay. I made it mean that he doesn't want sex. I made it mean that he doesn't like the way I initiate. I made it mean that he doesn't find me attractive.
What did you make it mean about him as a partner?
I made it mean about him as a partner that intimacy isn't part of that equation of our partnership. I made it mean that maybe we're a different kind of partner. I made it mean that he's afraid to communicate with me as a partner. I made it mean that he is afraid to be vulnerable with me as a partner.
And if he's afraid to be vulnerable with you as a partner, what does that mean?
That he doesn't feel safe with me to be vulnerable.
So let's add that beginning phrase again. I made it mean.
I made it mean that he doesn't feel safe with me to be vulnerable. Maybe I feel that way too.
Okay.
I just want to pause there for a second. Something happened in your facial expression, body movement there. What was coming up for you?
Right before I said that last part,
Yeah.
that I can see myself in that as well.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to offer you one last prompt in this same vein. When your partner rejects your sexual advances, what do you make it mean about your relationship?
When my partner rejects my sexual advances, I make it mean when my partner rejects my sexual advances, I make it mean that it's like blah. Okay, let me try that one more time.
You don't need to say this whole lengthy prompt. We know what the context is. You can just say what I make it mean about my relationship is.
What I make it mean about my relationship is we're going to be stuck here forever.
Just pause there with that one. Pause there with that one. Let your body catch up with the words.
I make it mean that we're going to be stuck here forever.
Notice how that feels in your body.
I'm going to ask you to tap into your body. You're partly there now. Just close your eyes for a moment. I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to just say the first answer that comes to your mind. No censoring. Are you going to be stuck there forever?
No.
How does it feel to say that?
Yeah, it feels relieving.
Now feel that relief in your body for a minute too. Okay.
Reminds
Look
me
at
that we have lots of time together.
Yeah. There's no rush.
Yeah.
And look at what your body innately knew. Right? Your mind made his response mean a whole bunch of things. And also there was something in you that knew very quickly, oh, we're not going to be stuck here forever.
Yeah. Yeah, relieves some pressure for sure. That I feel we've both felt, probably from society. That tells you should be having sex every day.
Sure, twice a day, whatever it is. Everybody's got different rules. Yeah, external pressure is not very helpful for presence.
Right. And like in that statement you just made, like, oh, what society tells us, or what we think we should be doing. If we allow ourselves to be led by that belief that we should be having sex every day, there's nothing wrong with having sex every day. But if we tell ourselves we should be, somewhere in that mix, when we are walking you through the prompts of what I make this mean about my relationship, is something's wrong with our relationship. Something's wrong with us. Right?
Yeah.
And how much pressure does that put on both of you?
So much.
Yeah. What does pressure do to sex drive?
What's on the brakes?
Even when we ask ourselves this question, or we ask our partners this question in relationship, how often do you want to have sex? The question itself is shrouded by these social expectations and all of our conditioning. And there's no timeline attached to it. We can't know if we're going to want to have sex at X, Y, or Z of a time. It's a sensation that comes up internally. And ideally, you'll both feel it at the same time. And if you don't, that's not the only intimacy there is. How do you feel your intimacy is in other areas of your relationship?
Great.
Can you say a bit more about that?
Yeah, we have a lot of intimacy. Like, every night we massage each other's feet on the couch. Or he just massages me, and it's amazing. And we hug lots and we kiss lots. And
So JC, I don't want this good stuff to go to waste. I want us to do the same thing that we did with things, previously. What's great about our relationship is, or the intimacy we have with each other is, and again, claim each one with your words, and then let your body get to enjoy that for a moment first before moving on to the next thing. Are you open to that?
Yes. What's great about our relationship is we are such a good team. What's great about our relationship is all of the humor and the laughs and the silliness. What's great about our intimacy is it has many different forms. What's great about our relationship is we give each other loving touch every day. What's great about our relationship is we're both willing to talk and have hard conversations.
Mm-hmm. What did you notice was happening with your body, even now, as you let yourself own and claim, celebrate what's great, and you give your body a chance to feel it? What are you noticing is happening?
I feel like a sinking, but like in a good way, like a settling in my body. I feel a relaxation in my chest and my throat. I felt a little smile come to my face. I'm able to breathe deeper and actually feel my body.
Actually feel my body, yeah. What do you imagine all that contributes to sex drive?
Yeah, no. When you can't feel your body, it doesn't go together. Yeah.
Right? When you experience a softening and a sinking and an opening and a smile to your face and this connection, this reconnection back to your body, right? Imagine what that does for desire and for the willingness to extend.
Yeah. Create space for it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You know, I can imagine you've been doing this work for some time. You've been connecting with yourself in new and meaningful ways for some time. I don't know what your partner's been up to during that time, but I could imagine that if I was not doing that sort of work for myself and I was witnessing somebody having all these new ways of feeling and being, that I might feel separate or a bit daunted or like I can't meet you where you're at. Do you have any sense of anything like that happening for your partner, that sense of separation?
When you said the words can't meet you where you're at, that resonated. Yeah, I kind of have some words to share around this, and I'd love your perspective. There was one point where I thought, we had to do this together and commit consciously to, do this sexual healing work. And there's an openness, but not really like a committedness on his end.
Wait.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
These are words that have assumptions attached to them, and these are words I encounter often. People expressing openness, but pairing that with the action of not openness. So when you're talking about commitment, he's not committed to it, but he's open to it. What does that actually mean?
Well, yeah, maybe he's not interested in it.
Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
What would a commitment look like for you in that regard?
Well, following through, like, okay, let's set a time aside to do a practice together, or sharing a podcast with me that he listened on the subject, or reading a book about the subject, or actions.
Gotcha. Okay. So what are the ways that you're sharing yourself with him and these new aspects of yourself you've connected with? How are you expressing those in the world?
Well, I haven't been expressing them lately. I was like, it's been like the last 2 years. So I was doing work and I was sharing about it. Oh, I did this workshop and this is what I discovered. And then even like bringing it together in the bedroom, like, hey, can we try this? Or just having conversations like, hey, I learned this interesting thing about female physiology and arousal, and, you know, sharing with him, that sort of thing. But like, I did kind of feel like, you know, I don't know. I think I shared, takes 40 minutes for a woman to be fully aroused. And there was this like, how can I meet you there? How can I, 40 minutes? Like, that was a huge one. Like, how do we meet? Literally.
Yeah. You start, I'll see you in 35.
That would be a tactic that I've thought about.
He can meet you in those 5 minutes. Yeah. No, I'm just joking. Perhaps he wants to meet you for the whole 40. Yeah. I'm curious if you've spoken about, because you shared with us a few ways that you have shared and what committing to it would look like in terms of what you would desire from him. I'm curious if he's shared with you what he's willing and excited to lean into.
Nope. No. Just the only thing he shared recently was like that he also wants to have more sex, and that maybe we can. What did we come to? To not put so much pressure on ourselves, to ease into it, but to set time aside. He brought that. Like, we had a conversation, and that's what he shared.
Right. This is a piece that often I find that when people come, especially couples come to us with a challenge, they overlook this piece. And yet I think this is a huge piece to feel and acknowledge and see, is you have right now a common desire, right? Mm-hmm. Often we struggle with each other because the strategy to meet that desire or help that desire come to fruition, it's not clear, or we don't see it the same way. We don't see the path the same way. And then it sort of maybe falls apart. And then we forget that we actually have the same desire. We're on the same team. Right? So coming back to that place of remembering, right? Remember, we walked you through the prompts and you shared with us what I made it mean, right? When my partner rejected my sexual advances. And often we'll walk people through practicing the opposite muscle, which is, what else could it mean? Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. And right now you have one piece that he's told you, I do desire more sexual connection with you. Mm-hmm. And Stephanie had sort of started the conversation with you on that track of what else could it mean, right? And I'm going to sort of tweak what we said earlier. When he rejected your sexual advances, I'd actually be curious about what exactly did he do? Like, did he say no? Did he push you away? What was the behavior that led you to believe this is a rejection of my sexual advances?
Yeah, saying no.
Okay. So when he said no, sorry, I missed that last part.
That I'm tired, or I don't feel like it right now.
Okay. And this part's really important, right? Because what he said was, I'm tired, or I don't feel like it right now. And often what we do with that even in conversation, oh, he rejected my sexual advances, right? We already make it mean that. And yes, there's an element of him saying no, but really all he said was, I'm tired.
Not right now.
And not right now. And we add all this extra meaning to it.
And this is where we're pausing for part 1. We will have the conclusion of this episode next week in part 2, where we're going to talk about solutions. So Georgiana will lead us out with a body practice.
So let's take a moment to connect in with your body. And maybe feel your butt on the chair or your feet on the ground. Maybe it's your hands touching something. I'm going to ask you to look at any object. It doesn't matter what it is. And once you see it, I want you to look for a new detail about this object that you haven't quite noticed before, or you haven't really paid attention to. Right? I'm looking up because I see a little picture frame, and I'm just looking at the little ridges that I never quite pay attention to. And I want you to look at that detail and feel your butt on the chair or your feet on the floor. And then we're going to turn and find another object. And we're going to look at this object and also look for a detail in this object that is new to you or something you don't usually spend much time looking at. And this time, if you can look at that detail and feel your hands touching whatever they're touching. And then I'm going to have you turn to behind you. And again, we're going to do the same thing, looking at an object and finding one detail that's new. This time, as you look, notice your breath. And then come back to sitting or being in a way that's comfy for you. Give yourself a moment to notice how that felt to do. Was it easy or was it hard? I really love this practice because it reminds us to look for the newness in what's familiar. And I think that's helpful not just in the things we see, but in the people who we know and the people who we love and the people who we spend time with. Are we willing to see what's new? Are we willing to see a piece that maybe we haven't seen before, even though they're always in front of us? So there's that.
Thank you, Gigi. If this is the kind of thing that you would like to participate in the future, this is the kind of work we do, and there will be more call-in shows. Our roster is currently full, but you can follow us on Instagram at Wholehearted Loving, which is where we will make announcements for future call-in shows. And we will see you next week for part 2. As always, do like, follow, and subscribe. And if anything we've said here today has been helpful for you, please share with somebody that you care about. See you next time.